to the Pig and Whistle Tales from Azeroth. As always, here at the Pig and Whistle Inn in Stormwind, I go through a variety of subjects with regards to World of Warcraft. I grab a bottle or a pint, sit back and enjoy. Today, we're going to be going over. I've forgotten the title of it already. For some reason, I hadn't written it down. It's basically the expansions and what was good about them, bad. So the bad and good of, or the evil. I can't remember what I came up with. It was a banger, I'm pretty sure. But the good and the bad, or the good and the ugly of each expansion. It was something along them lines, I'll say. But obviously, we have the weekly stuff to get through. So we have the world bosses for this week, which is Morgeth, Mortanis, and you now have a third one as of 9.2 coming out, which is Antros, which is at the north part of Zereth Mortis. So you have 3 world bosses. Make sure that you want to do whichever ones that you wish. You can get some anima from the first 2, and you can get some nice currencies from the third one. Zereth Mortis currencies, respectively. The weekly brawl, or I should say brawls, this week are Solo Shuffle and Temple of Hotmogu. Solo Shuffle is new as of 9.2 as well. You are put into an arena with 5 other people. It is a 3v3 arena, and you solo queue into this. It gets you a lot of honor, and it is very nice to actually do because it's a better way to do it, or to gain honor rather than battlegrounds when no battleground week is up. So it's very good, and it helps you sort of get into the flow of arenas, might help you a bit towards that. So if you're looking to start arenas or gear up some ults, this is probably the brawl to do. And we also have Mists of Pandaria time walking this week. So if you want to do some dungeons from Mists of Pandaria era or expansion, definitely hop on over there, get your time walking badges, save up, and you can purchase some nice things. So let's obviously start with expansions. Now, World of Warcraft as a whole has had so many expansions. It's had 9 expansions. 9 expansions if you include the actual release of the game, so 8 expansions since the game has been released. I will include Classic in this, mainly because Classic is the base game and it's an expansion. We didn't have anything before the game came out, so I'm going to class it as a type of expansion here. So what happened in Classic that are the main talking points, really? You obviously have World of Warcraft's release. World of Warcraft's release came off of the back of Warcraft 3, Warcraft 1, 2, and 3, and it saw a lot of success from its release, as you could see throughout the years after it was released, it just kept growing and growing. Now, the release of it was very good. It brought us 2 continents. It brought us multiple zones, like, say, about 40-ish zone. No, 40, God. Definitely not 40. More about, like, 25-ish zones, something along them lines. There was a lot of content to do for people in 2004 to 2007, I believe. Was it 2007? No, it would have been 2006. When the Burning Crusade comes out. There was a lot to do for people. People didn't necessarily get to experience everything in Classic. A lot of people didn't experience the original Naxxramas raid that was released in World of Warcraft Vanilla. And, this is a bit of a disappointment because a lot of people obviously might not have had best internet connection. The PCs certainly weren't as good as they are today. So it's very tough to experience the raiding environment as you would. And that is another part of Classic, the raiding that was in the game at the time. You had 20-man and 40-man raids, and the 40-man were very good. They were good raids, and you would obviously have to build quite a big composition. You obviously needed a select amount of healers, DPS, tanks, and stuff like that. For one of the boss fights, in Naxxramas, you needed 8 tanks, which is absolutely ludicrous. I don't think any fighter's ever had 8 tanks again since then, unless you count Naxxramas in Wrath of the Lich King. No, you need about 2, maybe 3 tanks, maximum at this point. You You also have the 20-man version, so Zilgarub. I'm pretty sure it was only Zilgarub. Yeah, it was. No, AQ20, Uncouraged Ruins, AQ20. The 20-man raids were a lot more, obviously, simpler in terms of their mechanics. To be honest, vanilla mechanics weren't, that taxing, in all honesty. I suppose the most mechanical you got was Kel'Thuzad, where you all had to be spread out, deal with mind controls, just CC and stuff, but that's very simple, I'd say. The melee had to obviously stand within certain groups so that they didn't chain like a frost tomb or something and stuff like that. So, the 20-man raids were a lot simpler, and it was a lot easier content. You could just go into it for a couple hours and you'd be done. Nothing too stressful. The 40-man raids, if you're progressing, you're looking at 4 hours here and there, stuff like that. It's sort of a drag, to be honest, more than anything. If you're looking at the PvP side of Classic as well, you obviously only had the 3 battlegrounds plus World PvP, so not necessarily the most variety that you had in it. Class design was very good in Classic, though, I will give them that. There was a lot of unique spells and abilities that each class had, and they had their own unique feel. And I feel like this goes or applies to the next expansions, such as TBC Wrath and a little bit of Cataclysm. Maybe Missa Pandaria as well, but Draenor was when it sort of started to, take that away. You didn't have that sort of... you can distinguish a class from each other because of the spells that they brought to the table and had. Everyone had a certain, everyone had a certain CC or, a heal or something like that. So Classic was good. Classic was very good. I've had the opportunity to play through, obviously, WoW Classic, and it was very good. It was a very fun time. And yeah, I'll remember it, but it didn't really capture me as I'm a big PvP player. So honestly, I would say that it was good more than evil, definitely. And I'd probably give it 7 out of 10, maybe 6, 7 out of 10, something like that. Now, moving on to TBC, obviously you had the introduction of arenas in Burning Crusade. This is one of the biggest staple points of World of Warcraft right now. They have constantly, or not constantly, they've given arenas more maps and stuff like that, but they need to do a lot more with arenas and look at the PvP side a lot more with the game, to be honest. Raiding went from 40 and 20 mans to 25-man raids and 10-man raids as well. So raiding was reduced in size a bit because it was very tough to find 40 people on the same day to play the game, have the time to play the game, go through the raids and stuff like that. Attunements were also something that was a lot more looked at in Burning Crusade. You had to do a lot more setup for it. So you had to do 5 heroic dungeons. You had to do a raid before you could enter the next raid and stuff like that. So it was quite time consuming and you had to put quite a bit of effort into your characters. But it wasn't. It was something that you enjoyed doing the first time around. The second time it felt like you were just dragging your feet along, to be honest. Flying was also introduced in Burning Crusade. Obviously, flying in Outland. There was no flying in Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor yet. And they added a couple new races. You had the Blood Elf and the Draenei. These are the first 2 races that were added in the game before or after the release. So it wasn't, bad expansion at all. They did improve in some aspects, such as they added more stuff to PvP with the arenas and also Eye of the Storm. I will not forget to mention that. The raiding, they took it into a place that it was a lot more accessible for a lot more people. The achievements were a bit of a downside in my opinion. It should be very easy to go into raids. It shouldn't be a massive drag. The raids themselves should be the hard part. Flying obviously makes it a lot more easier to navigate the landscape, such as Blade's Edge Mountains, which was very tough, which was a very y-axis type of geography. And the races were obviously something brand new and the first to be added since the game's release, bringing the total count from 8 playable races to 10 with these two. So TBC was good, but apart from that, there wasn't really much else that it could do from the release of Classic. So honestly, I would give it about 6, 7 out of 10 again. There was a lot of stuff that could have been cleaned up and polished, but they looked to experiment with different sort of systems, such as the arenas and stuff like that, the different raid numbers and all of that. In Wrath of the Lich King, achievements were now gone as of, I think, Icecrown Citadel. I believe that they took out the achievements. So these are now gone. So obviously they tried something and it wasn't as enjoyable as some people might have thought it was, or as Blizzard thought it was, and stuff like that. Now, I will say that the balancing while keeping the class diversity here was very good. This is probably one of its peak times, as the class diversity was still very much within the sort of classic boundaries. You had a lot of classes having their own unique spells. You have priests having their own sort of... do they have their own spells? No, they don't anymore, because TBC took that away. So you have a lot of class-specific spells, and you could identify very clearly just what a class is by the certain spell, obviously, that it is using. That might sound very simple in the way that I'm saying it, but I think people will understand what I mean by it, or at least I very much hope so. You have the zones that were obviously introduced into Wrath of the Lich King, so Northrend, they were very good. You had Boring Tundra, Dragonblight, Grizzly Hills, Howling Fjord, Zuldrak, Storm Peaks, Sholazar Basin, and Icecrown. It is called Icecrown, yes. They are all of the new zones that were added, and I literally just listed them off by heart because that's what I knew. Now, raiding did take a small change. You obviously still have the 10 and 25 man raiding, but you could now do it on normal or heroic difficulties, like you could dungeons in Burning Crusade. So you have the option to do a tougher raid, and it will give better loot and stuff like that. And the class that was added was Death Knight. This is the first new class that we've got within the game, and it was a very strong class. It was the first hero class, and this hero class really did slap everything down. Like, honestly, it was insane. They walked into the bar, like in an old Western sort of style bar, and they just drew their gun and killed every single class. It was insane. Like, honestly, they just shot everyone down cold blood. That's how powerful they were, and they basically just had no mercy on anything. So, yeah, the class was something when it released. We will say that. We will definitely say that. Overall, Wrath of the Lich King was kind of the peak of what the old World of Warcraft game was. Now, I kind of deem World of Warcraft as two parts to it. You have the Cataclysm and pre-Cataclysm, and then you have after that the Mists of Pandaria and Draenor. Usually when the talent tree changed, that's sort of how I define when it most likely changed and got into the second part. So, in my opinion, this was the peak of sort of part 1 of World of Warcraft. So I would probably give Wrath of the Lich King about an 8. 7, 8 at least out of 10. It was very good. I might be a bit nostalgic over it, as it's the first expansion I truly remember. I played since the start of Wrath of the Lich King, maybe late Burning Crusade. So it's sort of what I have fond memories of and how I started out in, the game World of Warcraft. Cataclysm. Now, I do have to say, I don't remember a lot about Cataclysm. I want to say I took a break, but I don't even think I took a break. My brain just has forgotten Cataclysm as a whole. It was meh. So obviously in Cataclysm, you didn't get any new zones, or you got a few. You got a few new zones, but the main point of Cataclysm was that they reshaped Azeroth, and this didn't sit well with a lot of people. Obviously, people had learned to love the Azeroth that we had come to know, such as the old barons and stuff like that. And they just sort of changed the entire dynamic of the world as we knew it. So the barons became North and South barons. Thousand Needles, which is a dry, desolate place, turns into Shimmering. No, not the Shimmering Flats. It is still Thousand Needles, but it is now flooded. So it's just an all-water zone, pretty much. And that isn't as fun, I would say. You know, it's... if you have to trudge around or swim around in water, it's not as enjoyable, in my opinion, because it just doesn't feel right killing stuff in the water in World of Warcraft. You obviously had a couple new races. You had Goblins and Worgen. Not the most favourable races. Goblin, kind of meh. Worgen, kind of meh. Obviously, people have their own thoughts and opinions about that, but I feel like a majority aren't too keen on these races as a whole. They much preferred either some of the races that came after them or were already in the game. Dungeons and raids weren't too bad. Now, obviously, I can't speak much on the raiding. PvP, it was very tough because it was sort of in a half transition period, because you have Wrath and Lich King that was sort of peak times, and you have Mr. Pandaria that's coming out that's trying to give everyone everything, such as every class a CC, every class a heal, every class, a interrupt effect or whatever. So it was in that weird sort of purgatory, that's the word, purgatory sort of feel. So Kata wasn't really great. I can't remember much of it, and that's probably why I would give it such a 4 or 5 out of 10. It's not memorable at all, and that's where it goes wrong, in my opinion. Mr. Pandaria. Now, I remember quite a bit about Mists. Classes and race. We obviously got given the Pandaren race, as well as the Monk class, which, by the way, are broken, and please do something about that, Blizz, because they spinning crane kick me for about 100k when I have about 70k, so, just whenever you're ready to fix that in Shadowlands, that would be very much appreciated. The zone, obviously, or the zones that we got within Mr. Pandaria are the Island Pandaria, as well as the Jade Forest. You had Karasang Wilds, you had the Dread Wastes. I'm trying to remember this off by heart. Vale? Is it Vale or Valley? Vale of Eternal Blossoms, I'm pretty sure. There's a couple more which were up north, but I cannot remember them for the life of me. So it wasn't amazing zones, but some of them were very good in the way that they looked and felt. They really felt like it was harmonious in a way, and that's what they wanted to do with this race. The Pandarians were a very harmonious sort of race and people, and they wanted to show that in terms of their landscape. And they really did do that with some of these, and they showed the corruption as you went further and further into the land, and it was really good. It was actually really good, some of the zones, in terms of how they looked, how they told the story and stuff like that. Obviously, we had the talent system that changed. So we went from the original, you get a talent point every level, from level 10 onwards, to you get a talent that you can pick from every 10 levels or something, or every 15, and you got a choice of 6, rows at the time. So it's a massive change how the system works from the previous expansions, and I think this is why Mr. Pandaria is actually remembered quite a lot because of this talent change system. A lot of people remember this change and always associate Mr. Pandaria with this. Now, obviously, I literally was just about saying, now, obviously. So there were scenarios within Mr. Pandaria as well. These scenarios were like 3-man sort of dungeon type questing things. You did them for a couple quests. They weren't anything special, and they basically don't exist in the game now. They only exist in certain quests, but you can do that, very easily. These things you actually had to queue up for in Mr. Pandaria. Best thing about Mr. Pandaria as well, actually, is the Timeless Isle. This is the start of every sort of point 2 patch going forward. It introduced this sort of island where you could farm currencies, kill rares, do a lot of small activities on the island without having to be forced to do them. And this is where every patch point 2 comes from after Mr. Pandaria night or Mr. Pandaria point 2 patch, because this is the start of it. This is where it originated from, and just like Zereth Mortis, you go around killing rares, doing your quests, finding treasures. That is where Timeless Isles, just different rares. It's absolutely insane how that is always associated with a point 2 patch now. So Mr. Pandaria was good. I would definitely give it sort of a solid 7 out of 10. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great. There was a lot of stuff to do in Mr. Pandaria, and I do have quite fond memories of it. I don't really think there was anything bad about it, in all honesty. It was a very average expansion and very decent. Draenor. Now, do we want to talk about Draenor? I don't know. It was a content drought. That's the best way to put it. It was a massive, massive content drought. Just like Shadowlands, Shadowlands has currently had a massive content drought over its past, Jesus Christ, 1.5 years. Yeah, 1.5 years it's been out, and we've got 0.2 patch about a week ago, or about a week and a half ago, which is insane. Draenor, however, I actually think Draenor had a quicker patch cycle than Shadowlands, so that's pretty sad. But there was a lot of content that was scrapped for Draenor. Obviously, you had the zone or the world of Draenor, which is Outland, but just a younger version of it. So you had Nagrand, you had Spies of Arak, which is Terakar Forest. You have Shadowmoon Valley, Frostfire Ridge. You have the Zangar Sea, which turned into Zangarmarsh. Blade's Edge, I'm not too sure about. You have the North one, Gorgrond or whatever, which I think turns into Blade's Edge, to be honest with you. They weren't amazing. You got a little sort of power every time that you entered the zone, because you had like your garrison followers, and you had a section set up there to give you a power and stuff like that. But it wasn't anything groundbreaking. The raids were very good though, apparently. I obviously don't do raiding myself, but raiding apparently was very, very good in Draenor for the raids that did get released. And I just have to take people's words for it, because people have said that Blackrock Foundry is like one of their best raids that they've ever put out in the game, which is insane. This is coming at a time when WoW was on a massive spiral downhill because of the lack of content that is being put out. So to come out with one of your best raids in the game at this time is life-saving for the game, in all honesty. But not much to say about Draenor. It was just very lackluster. There wasn't much in terms of what I was looking for, which is PvP content, obviously. So, it's got to be like 5, 6 out of 10. It could have been so much better. They could have done it perfectly, honestly. That was a gold mine ready to be just found. But it was meant to be, which is really upsetting, because I had high hopes for Draenor after learning the lore and sort of what is going on in this place and stuff like that. And then they followed it up with this, Legion. Oh, Legion was good. Class halls. Each class got their own separate order hall. Paladins got a sort of prayer room underneath Light's Hope Chapel. Mages got the Tower of the Guardian, where you could teleport to. Rogues got the underbelly of Dalaran, a secret, entrance that you could open that only rogues could enter. It was good. It was so good. Warriors got the Halls of Valor, so you'd literally go to Odin's sort of halls and stuff like that. It was very good. Artifact weapons as well. Ashbringer, Tyr's Hammer, Fellow Malorn, Ebon Chill, a Lunath for mages. All of these might not make sense to you, these names, and if so, I am sorry, but they are all weapons that have been wielded by powerful lore characters in the past, very powerful lore characters. So yeah, just the artifacts that you could get and you empowered them. It was very, very good. The zones were very solid as well, Asuna being the only zone that I didn't necessarily enjoy, but you had stuff like Suramar, which is endgame content, which is very, very solid, with the giant city, and you're sort of working around the outskirts, trying to infiltrate and stuff like that. Val Shara, that story was absolutely amazing. You had High Mountain, which is very solid as well, with the High Mountain Torrent. And, oh my god, there's one more and I can't remember it. Stormheim. That was it, Stormheim, where you had a little bit of alliance and horde conflict happening within that zone. So the zones were very solid. They had very good storylines of their own, and it was very good. The only downside I really think about it is numbers-wise. So the numbers that we were seeing in Legion were in the millions. So you had, I can't even remember. We'll just do a rough estimate. 10 million health. Now, seeing 2 million damage from a hit, that's great. Yeah, 2 million's great. But it doesn't feel great because this person's got maybe 50 million or something. We'll go with that. And it's just, you don't feel as powerful. I feel powerful when I hit 20k damage, so 20,000 in today's Shadowlands, because it isn't a long string of numbers. It is very much 20k out of 70k. It feels more impactful rather than 2 million out of 50 million. You know, it feels a lot more impactful. So this was one of the downsides of Legion. The numbers did get a bit crazy, but they've learned, and from now on they're scaling it all down and stuff like that, which is really good. Class that was obviously added in Legion was Demon Hunter. Now, Demon Hunter don't have as many buttons as monks, I will say that. But, you know, Demon Hunters are quite cool. First class to be able to double jump, which is really useful in certain situations. You know, first class to see stealth characters very easily. It's got a lot to it. The Demon Hunter. I like the concept of Demon Hunter, and I think a lot of people did as well. And it fit with the expansion. People knew why the Demon Hunters were coming back to help us fight the Burning Legion and stuff like that. So it was really good. Legion was very, very solid. I'd give it very much a 8, 9 out of 10. It had patches constantly rolling out every like 77 days or something. Average was when a new patch would come out, which is absolutely insane. Compare that to nearly a year. We literally were on, we didn't get our first patch in Shadowlands until a year later since its release. So, you know, that's about 8 to 10 months quicker. Yeah, that's pretty good. It's not bad at all. So yeah, I'd give it an 8, 9 out of 10 Legion. There were smaller things that it could do that would bring it up a bit to a solid 9, but you know, there's some of them things that just don't sit right with me. They might sit right with you. Battle for Azeroth. Now, the zones that you got in this was quite weird. You had two different continents, and each continent was sort of for the faction that you played for. So, Kultiras and them sort of zones, Drustvar and Stormheim? Not Stormheim? Oh my god. Storm was awake. It's something like that. I can't remember it exactly. But this was for the Alliance players, and you had Zuldazar for the Horde players. Now, obviously, you went into these different zones for your respective faction to infiltrate them and to do your war campaign. And there was a lot of storylines within Battle for Azeroth, which was really good. They were very story-driven within the expansion, and they were testing out that sort of style. Obviously, there have been stories in the past, such as Legion. Each zone had its own different story. But for Battle for Azeroth, you had a set story that everyone was going through. You couldn't choose, you couldn't differ from it at all. It was this storyline that you are going through, whether it be your leveling from level 1 to 60, or level 50 to 60, I should say, or you're leveling or you're doing your war campaign at level 60, you're doing the same quests in the Horde zone. So, like, you're infiltrating their capital city and stuff like that. Faction divide was also something big in BFA. Horde and Alliance were very much against each other. They had no sort of common enemy until very late on within the expansion. But, you know, it was an expansion that could have done more with the PvP side. This could have been an expansion to really hammer home some PvP changes and to really go for it and to give the PvP community maybe a lot more love than what they deserve, or what they have been getting, to be honest. Not what they deserve. The PvP community, I think, do deserve quite a bit, because, you know, we don't get treated as well, possibly, unlike the raiding and PvE side of things. But, you know, it was all good. It was a very solid expansion, looking back at it. It's just, I don't know, there was a lot of expectations coming out of Legion, going into BFA. So, for that, I'm going to have to rate it a bit lower, probably like a 6, 7 again, maybe a 6. A solid 6, I would say. Sorry, my throat is going a bit dry. Yeah, I'd say definitely a solid 6. And this leads us into the last expansion, Shadowlands. Shadowlands, obviously, is a expansion that could have done so much. It could have been absolutely flawless. They could have went crazy with this. This is nowhere in our plane of existence within World of Warcraft. This isn't what we've experienced before on Azeroth with Northrend, Pandaria, you know, or even another world, which is Outland, Draenor, because these are all different places that normal mortals have lived. So they need grass for growing crops. They have a desolate wasteland. They usually have some sort of, flourishing forest or whatever. They could have done something crazy in Shadowlands. They could have went absolutely mental with the entirety of the zones and pretty much whatever they wanted. And some of them were good. Ardenweald was amazing, I feel. Revendreth was very good. I like the sort of old castle style stuff. Bastion was very bright. And Maldraxxus was a war zone, which makes sense. Like it's basically where the armies are made and stuff like that. So the zones weren't bad, I will say that. Covenant and systems are what make Shadowlands, though. There are a lot of systems, and the Covenants are the biggest thing in Shadowlands. And I think the Covenants are very good. They could tune, obviously, some of the abilities to make it more fair for different classes. So Warrior is a good example. Warrior have all 4 of their Covenants are very strong choices for their class. If you look at, say, a priest, it's not necessarily as strong as some of the others. If you look at shaman, now Venthyr shaman is used by enhancement shamans only. Vesper totem is very much if you want to sort of go for massive burst damage. Maldraxxus is very much a consistent choice. And then Night Fae is just a meme. It's a meme that can do a lot of damage, but it is a meme if you're looking to do something very serious with regards to high mythics or, push high sort of ranking in arenas. Now, don't get me wrong, people do use this, but it's very rare and it's a lot tougher on yourself. But Shadowlands just didn't live up to the expectation. We were hoping for a Legion after Battle for Azeroth again. We were hoping for something to catch us and to, make us love the game again. But it didn't quite deliver. 9.2 is a stepping stone, and I think that from there they can go on and do big things because of because of the changes that we have seen. But ultimately, we won't know until the next expansion. So I will give Shadowlands 5, 6 out of 10. It had so much potential, but it fell so flat when it came to the content that it delivered, as well as the hard time that Blizzard are having right now dealing with a lot of internal issues. But that is all for this week. Thank you very much for listening. Do sure to check out the social medias as well as Patreon. Check out the Twitch and the YouTube for Pig and Whistle as well. Constant streams happening and videos going up. Again, thank you all very much for listening, and go with Valor, friend. Goodbye all.